Alright, today we're going to be taking a look at homeostasis and feedback loops. Before we continue with that topic, I just wanted to review really quickly the characteristics of living things. We saw this in Unit 1, and we found out that all living things, no matter what they are, should have these 8 characteristics. They should be made of cells. Their body can be made of one or many cells. They should have genetic material inside their cells. They need to have the ability to reproduce and get and use materials and energy for all the chemical reactions that are occurring in their body. We call that metabolism. Over time, as a population, they should evolve. We should see some changes that occur in them. They'll maintain homeostasis, which is what we're going to be taking a look at today. As individuals, they'll grow and develop from, let's say, a baby to an adult, okay, or seed to a full plant, okay, a full adult plant. They'll respond to stimuli, so they'll respond to things that are around them. So those are the 8 characteristics of living things. Let's focus on metabolism again. So remember, metabolism is all the chemical reactions and processes that occur in your body. And all of these processes need energy. We also need certain materials too. So how do we get that energy? Where does it come from? Or even those materials that we need? Okay. In order for our chemical reactions and those processes to occur in our bodies, we need certain materials and energy. So like water, oxygen, food, okay, heat as energy. Some organisms need light energy to make their food. Okay, we talked about these macromolecules and how they either provide energy, they store energy. Okay, they help with all these different, like I said, chemical reactions or metabolic activities that occur in your body. So the whole goal of your metabolic activities is to make sure that your body is at a balance. Okay? And so that's what homeostasis is, making sure that the organism, or even if we took a look at the cell or the cells itself, the cells themselves, that there's an internal stable environment. So inside that cell or inside that organism, it's stable, no matter what's happening externally. So no matter what's happening outside of the cell, outside of the organism's body, what's happening inside is stable or at a balance. Now, how does the body maintain homeostasis? Well, it needs to check itself to make sure it's at a balance. And if it's off balance, if things are unstable, they're not working right, the whole point is to fix it and make sure that we restore homeostasis. Now, how does our body maintain homeostasis? We have our body checks itself by using things called feedback loops. And there are 2 different types of feedback loops we're going to take a look at, and by the end of this video, you should be able to tell the difference between the 2. We have positive and negative feedback loops. So, positive feedback loops are any types of things or any events that we're going to do more of so we can get some type of effect. So, here is an example of a situation where positive feedback loop occurs. Let's say a baby is hungry, and the baby will then latch on to mom's breast so he or she can feed off of mom's milk. Well, when that happens in mom's body and she feels the baby on her breast, then there's a signal that goes to her brain that tells her body to produce more milk. And this will continue over and over and over again. These steps will continue until there's not a need for making more milk. So maybe the baby is full now, the baby will go ahead and unlatch from mom's breast, okay, and then that'll stop the signal to her brain to make more milk at that time. So like I said, this loop will continue until one of these steps is stopped or removed. Another example, again, in this case with humans, is in terms of childbirth. So the baby, once it's close to the end of going to be delivered, it's going to kind of turn and face towards the cervix. And the cervix is kind of an opening to the uterus. and the baby will press up against that cervix when it's ready to be delivered. And when that happens, mom's body can sense that, and signals will be sent to the pituitary gland that will secrete or let out a hormone called oxytocin. Now that oxytocin will go ahead and cause mom's uterus to contract more, and that'll cause the baby to push up even more against the cervix. And since that cervix is being pressed on, again, more oxytocin is going to be released. Okay, and this will continue happening again and again and again until the cervix is large enough so that the baby can be delivered. So positive feedback loops, like I said, it happens, the events occur over and over again, or more and more and more, until we get some type of effect. In this case, the baby being delivered. This isn't just happening in animals like humans. This also happens in other organisms where we would see feedback, positive feedback loops. So for instance, here we have a tree, and one of the apples has now started to ripen. When it does that apple will go ahead and release a hormone, which is like just a chemical signal messenger, and it'll go ahead and release ethylene into the air, that gas. Okay. Now ethylene, its whole what it does is it speeds up the ripening process. So when nearby fruits that are not ripened yet, they are kind of exposed to that ethylene, then you can see they're going to ripen, and since they're ripening, they're going to release more ethylene into the air, and that's why you're going to see, the fruits are going to ripen kind of like somewhat around the same time. So that's positive feedback loops. Now we have negative feedback loops, which we're going to do something to decrease, the events that we're going to do is going to decrease some things so that the body or the cell goes back to its original state. So for instance, our normal body temperatures is usually at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. We don't want this temperature to be too high or too low, because then there are certain chemical reactions in our body that's not going to work properly. So let's say we're in the middle of a heat wave, and it's super hot outside, and our temperature starts to rise because it's really hot. Now, there are going to be sensors that send signal to our brain to stimulate that sweat gland, and then we start to sweat. And when we sweat and that sweat evaporates from our skin, then it kind of cools us off so that we can get back to our original normal temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So this will continue, these steps will continue to happen over and over again until we've reached homeostasis, until we've gotten back to that original kind of balanced state. Okay. This also happens in plants. Okay, so transpiration is when water goes up against gravity, and it'll start off at the roots because the roots will absorb the water from the soil. The water goes up to the stem and into the leaves, and that's great because then the cells in the leaves can do photosynthesis. Okay, now the thing about it is, water can go to the leaves so that the cells can do photosynthesis, but water can actually leave through these small tiny holes called stomata, and that water will evaporate out of the plant. So that means basically the plant can lose water from its body from these openings called stomata. Now, stomata are good because, like I said, it'll help with photosynthesis because it'll let in carbon dioxide, but if it's open, then it can also have a chance of letting out water that the plant might need. Okay. Now that stomata is surrounded by guard cells, and if you can see, those guard cells open and close the stomata. So if the guard cells have vacuoles that are filled up with water, then the stomata is open. But if the vacuoles have lost water to its environment through osmosis, then it's going to close up. So when the environment doesn't have a lot of water and the plant can't absorb as much water, okay, it doesn't want to lose that water. It wants to keep that water within its body. So when it senses that, the plant will secrete a hormone, a chemical messenger, that will trigger the shrinking of these guard cells so that the stomata is going to be closed. So that in this case, water won't leave the body of the plant. So that is the end of today's lesson, all about homeostasis and the difference between positive and negative feedback loops.